Welcome to knittingboard.com. We're going to look at how to increase your knitting on the knitting board. Now, to increase simply means to make your knitting wider. A basic increase usually refers to just simply increasing from each end of your knitting, coming out one or more stitches. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to lift the last row loop, which means the loop that last came off of the needles. We're going to lift it up and out to the next needle. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. When you work on a knitting board, you're always going to do the same thing to one side as you do to the other because these two needles constitute one stitch. Now this pattern may call for you to do this at both ends of the board. So again, you pick up the loop from the previous row, lift it up and out to the next stitch or to the next needle. And then you do the same thing to the other side, the previous row, out to the next empty needle. We're now ready to weave, and when we do, we're going to be starting on our new stitches. Our knitting will be 2 stitches wider than it was in the last row. Now let's look at another way that we could do that, because doing it this way, you're going to have an obvious increase on the edge of your knitting. That might not be desirable in this particular pattern. So let's place this back where it was. Simply looped over. And let's say we want to increase, again, at both ends of the board, but in a little softer way. What we'll do is simply pick up our last stitch and move it to the next available needle. Both sides, and this particular pattern calls for both ends, depends on the shaping that you're doing, and we'll put it on the next needle. Now we're going to make that actual increase over to the empty needles by picking up the previous row of the second stitch onto that empty needle. Your pattern will usually read increase from second needle. When it says this, this is how you want to increase. Picking up that previous row of the second stitch, creating a new second stitch. That one becomes the third. Again, you just start your weaving of the next row on all of your new stitches, and your knitting is 2 stitches wider. Now your pattern may call for an increase all across to your stitches. What that's going to do is just make that knitting just kind of swell out. So we want to create, let's say, 4 new stitches. What we want to do is start just shifting our loops over to the empty needles, creating empty needles within the knitting where we want those increases to be. So I'm going to take my end needles and move them over. I'm going to do the same to this end. I'm going to move over the next one. We're just shifting. That's all we're doing is just shifting our loops over to create some empty needles. Okay, we've got 2. We're going to have 2 more, but we wanted 4 more. So let's move them out one more time. Just keep moving them. Okay, let's say we're going to do an increase right here on the 3rd, and let's get over more into the middle. Oops, right here. We're going to do it on the 3rd. We'll increase on the 3rd. Keep moving your loops over. And let's do the next increase right about here. Now, based on your pattern, you're probably going to have specific needles where the pattern calls for those increases. But for us, we're going to have them on the 3rd, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8th. 3rd and 8th needle. Let's do the same thing down here. Move these loops over. Keep moving them. We're going to match the other side. Okay, there we have the 3rd available. let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's our 8th one. So just move that one over. Now you'll notice that you have empty needles at needle number 3, empty needles at number 8. From the other end, you have number 3 and number 8. So you have 4 empty needles on each side. So you have increased your knitting by 4 stitches. Now you want to do the increase by simply lifting from the inside of the empty needle the previous row and just lifting it up and over and placing it on those empty needles. Over here, from the inside, up and over, from the inside, up and over. Same thing down here. Come to the inside of your empty needle, lift it up and over. On the other side, the same. Come down to your inside of your empty needle and inside of your empty needle. Now you have 4 more stitches on the length of, or the width of your piece, and you're ready to weave. And you simply weave over the top of all of your stitches. Now if you're knitting with a different pattern, like a rib, you might have to do your weaving a little bit differently, but that will be part of your pattern.